Hi, I'm chrisjnewman. About a year ago, I published my crime thriller, By Way of Paris, which I'm incredibly proud of, but I have to admit, convincing strangers on the internet to spend $20 on a novel is sometimes difficult, so I've come up with a new strategy. I'm going to pirate my own book to the internet. Yeah. One page every day. It's 321 pages, so this might either be the dumbest marketing strategy on the planet or pure genius. We'll find out together, I guess. So, here it is, By Way of Paris. Page 1, Chapter 1. A professor once told me I couldn't write the beginning of a story without knowing how it ends. And that's good advice, but I'd say my ending is pretty damn close, since the banging inside my trunk is getting louder and it's drawing a crowd. I parked the stolen car in the heart of Paris, across from the Hotel de Ville, where I was inspired to do some last-minute writing. An author in Paris is dreadfully cliche, but I promise, nothing about my time abroad has been normal. Hell, in the last 24 hours, I've been beaten, kidnapped, and blackmailed. And just this afternoon, I aided in the murder of someone I once called a friend. I left North Carolina 6 months ago to travel Europe before my master's program started in London, a city I've been fascinated with since childhood. I was accompanied by my best friend, Corey Cash, a young entrepreneur who had seen the world twice over and firmly decided that Paris was his favorite city. He and his fiancée Emma had recently split, and I thought some sightseeing would do him good. As for Cash, he saw my dysfunctional upbringing firsthand as kids, and he thought finally leaving the country would do me some good, my writing too. So in late summer, we set off to see what adventures Europe had in store. That's page 1. If you'd rather not wait until sometime next year to figure out what happens next, my novel is available for purchase anywhere books are sold. Otherwise, see you tomorrow for day 2. Welcome to day 2 of me pirating my own novel to the internet, because apparently this is my new marketing strategy. I don't know. Let's get into it. Page 2 of 321. In Munich, we had countless liters of beer from all 6 major breweries in a futile attempt to clear my writer's block. We toured millions of museums in Rome and drank wine under the hot sun until I puked on the famous Spanish steps. Still, couldn't shake a word loose. And in Barcelona, we lost 8 hours of our lives when we were given roofied drinks meant for 2 hot Swedish girls. Cash woke up on the bathroom floor of our hotel, and I woke up slumped over my notebook on the balcony. I'd written nothing but a losing game of tic-tac-toe on the page. The last 2 weeks of our trip culminated in Paris, where Cash and I stormed countless cafes and bars with my notebook and pen. From Le Marais down to the Latin Quarter and back up to Montmartre, we saw the sights, met the people, and yet I couldn't write a word about it. It wasn't until a particularly long session of staring at my notebook that I realized I needed to search for a deeper Parisian experience, go beyond that of the average tourist. On our last night in Paris, we finally made a turn off the beaten path when we met a man named George Goodwin in a kitschy dive bar with American memorabilia on the walls. George was a dapper young Englishman in a gray Armani suit. We spoke for an hour about all the authors he knew in Paris, and he mentioned he was headed to a party brimming with writers and artists. "Mate, if you're going to make it as a writer, you need to network," he said, poking my chest. "You've got to put yourself out there." Apparently, he and his weed dealer, Remy, were quite chummy with the next wave of great Parisian wordsmiths. "Screw this guy. Let's get out of here," Cash said while George phoned Remy. "I know you're looking for a story, but you'll be abroad for a whole year. There'll be plenty of inspiration along the way. You're not going to find anything good with people like him." And that's page 2 in the books. Only 319 more pages to go, or at least until I get a cease and desist from my publisher's lawyers. I don't know. I don't know what to do. See you tomorrow. All right, day 3 of me reading my entire crime novel to the internet until you all tell me to go to hell. I don't know. Here we go. That's not true, I thought. In fiction, sketchy people like George always make the best characters. The Englishman gave me a thumbs up as he re-entered the smoky bar and smoothed down his hair. George's unpredictability was what my story needed, what my life needed. "Come on, let's check this party out," I said to Cash. "This year's my one shot and I've got to explore every option. If it gets weird, we can always leave." Begrudgingly, Cash agreed. His business mind was more skeptical than mine, and he thought George was a con man. As for me, I had never met other writers before, and my blank page desperately needed whatever George was selling. even if that meant maybe buying a little weed from this Remy character. The three of us downed our drinks and crammed into a tiny taxi that reeked of cologne and cigarettes. Cash was fidgety as we rode, stuffed between me and George. He and I grew up in the same shit neighborhood, but Cash's parents actually liked him and taught him to never get into the cars with strangers. My mother didn't stick around long enough to pass along that gem, so I was happy as a clam watching a lamplit Paris stream by my window. My booze head buzzed with excitement, and I soon lost my bearings in the maze of Gothic buildings. The cab dropped us off on God knows what side of town for Remy's apartment to pick up a few party favors, as George called them. Parked cars lined one side of the road, while a sea of mopeds lined the other. Distant honks echoed from the limestone buildings. George ushered us into a building with massive double doors, through a narrow hallway where we made the laborious hike up 5 flights to the top floor. A dim bulb buzzed above us as we caught our breath on the landing. George approached an apartment with purple light pouring through the edges of the doorframe and keyhole. Just as he raised a hand to knock, the door swung open, revealing a messy-haired Frenchman with a patchy beard. Day 3's a wrap right there. This is good momentum. We're really trucking along here. I could stop if I wanted to. All the crazy shit on the internet, this is fine, right? This is fine. See you tomorrow for page 4. Day 4 of me pirating my own novel to the internet. Here it goes. Page 4. Merde, the Frenchman gasped, shrouded in purple light. Georges, tu me fais peur. Sorry. George doubled over with laughter. I'm sorry, Remy. Are you leaving? Oui, pardon, he said, closing the door a little bit. Je dois y aller très occupé. Sorry for the French. George placed a hand on the door. These are the blokes I phoned about, he said. Remy examined us. I understand my cousin sent you a shipment this week. George tapped a finger against his nose. The nose gesture was strange, but I was too focused on Remy's hesitancy, and the sweat shining across his forehead in the purple light. I hadn't met many drug dealers, so I figured nervous and sweaty was how they always looked. Cash glared at me, primed and ready to leave. As the Frenchman deliberated, I noticed a camera above his door with a solid red light that said it noticed me too. It was all getting too weird, and just before I said to Cash, "Yep, let's go," Remy sighed and opened the door. D'accord, la gaz, entrez. I can't tell if it's a good French accent or about... Anyway, we stepped inside a long corridor of doors with a kitchen at the end. Remy marched over to the nearest door and slammed it shut, waving for us to follow. I took a wary breath and closed the front door behind me, where I discovered a second camera above the threshold overlooking the hallway. Whoever Remy was, he was paranoid. I followed them across the marble floors, gawking up at the arched glass skylight that spanned the length of the hall. Placed along the walls were 4 freestanding sculptures, asymmetrical modern art nonsense. The only truly distasteful thing about Remy's lavish apartment were the purple bulbs installed in every light fixture. We came around the corner into the main sitting room, which looked like a ballroom of a French palace turned into a brothel. A large TV was mounted on the wall closest to me, and at the far end of the room was a leather sofa and 2 armchairs encircling a glass coffee table. On the table was a bong about 3 feet high. And that's the end of page 4. Man, this is getting good. I don't know about you. I'm hooked. So, to page 5 tomorrow. See you. All right. Bye. Day 5 of me pirating my own novel to the internet because what are you gonna do? You know. Page 5. On the table was a bong about 3 feet high. Asseyez-vous. 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 It's French. You know, Remy gestured for us to sit. Cash and I sunk into the much too plush sofa, and George grabbed the bong. He and Remy rattled off in French. Okay, wait here, Remy said, disappearing down the hall. George sparked up the bong. The device bubbled and churned as smoke filled the glass chamber. He yanked out the bowl and handed the bong to Cash. Clear that, mate, he said with a lungful of smoke. Cash threw me a look that said, I hate you, but cleared the smoke like a champion. I choked when the bong was passed to me, and my eyes throbbed as I sputtered plumes of smoke into the purple light. Cash and George laughed. I don't smoke weed often, since it makes me paranoid. But that night I was chasing my story and feeling adventurous. Remy returned with a bag of white powder tied up in a knot and a digital scale. Cash and I shot a look to one another. Party favors, George said, chuckling. You show up to the party with this mate, and you'll leave with a book deal. Cash elbowed my ribs. Always a catch. Not wanting to lose face with George, I pulled out a wad of euros and paid Remy, who nodded approvingly, then poured himself a drink from the liquor cabinet. Maybe it was the weed already messing with my head, but he looked more nervous than before. Sweatier, too. Gross. All right, mate. A bit of Charlie before we go? George held up the baggie to me. Don't let me do it alone. Damn. My hand trembled as George took it upon himself to cut a few lines with his credit card on the table. He rolled up a 20-euro note and snorted the first 2 lines, then handed it to me. Everyone watched to see what I would do. After a moment of deliberation and avoiding eye contact with Cash, I groaned and said, better get a damn book deal, then snorted 2 lines. And that's the end of page 5. Come back tomorrow and see what happens next. Or if you don't want to wait, you can always buy my book. It's somewhere out there. It's just wherever you buy books. Google it. Buy with Paris. Day 6 of me reading my entire crime novel to the internet, 1 page at a time. Page 6. Holy shit, the drug delivered its punch quick. As if some warm, invisible force picked me up and set me on my feet. And the euphoria that followed, like whispers from an unseen voice saying, anything is possible. Minutes later, I was rattling off North Carolina stories and laughing with a stoned Cash. I forgot about Remy's erratic behavior and instead was intrigued by our new friend George and how he ended up in Paris. Let's just say I need to make a lot more money before I'm allowed back to London, George shrugged. But I've made myself useful here, as you can see. He pointed to the cocaine. Wow, a Londoner in the drug game fleeing his home country. That's a hell of a character. My heart pounded, and not just from the drug, but from the excitement that my story was practically writing itself. Time began to slip. It felt as if we had been at Remy's for hours, and in the same second, like we had been there for no time at all. How was that possible? After what was probably my 4th line of cocaine, my mom hates this part, I'm sorry. My heart fluttered as the drug mixed with alcohol and the weed. I closed my eyes. They felt jittery as I sunk further into the absurdly plush couch. When I reopened them, the walls of the flat had drawn in closer. That's ridiculous. You're just high. My eyes landed on Remy. He stared into his empty glass, looking like a man awaiting execution. Whatever pain he felt, it pulsed from him like Wi-Fi. Cash and George joked about the artist we would meet later. There was a poet who detailed the genitalia of her past sexual partners in her recently published collection. Gross. A writer who used her own excrement to write a short story. Double gross. And a famous photographer who had taken nude portraits of his own mother. Unforgivably gross. Maybe I don't want to meet these people. I watched their mouths as they spoke. There was static in their words which made them feel fuzzy in my ears. And that's the end of page 6. Come back tomorrow to see what happens next. Also, no to cocaine, but go canes. Go canes. No to cocaine. Day 7 of me pirating my own crime novel to the internet, 1 page at a time. Slight trigger warning today. There's a dead body. I don't know what noise that was. Okay. Anyway, let's get into it. Page 7. Why could I hear my own heartbeat? Like encroaching war drums. My breathing became short and shallow. My chest rose and fell like the breast of a panicked bird trapped in the rafters of Remy's purple hell. Oh God, I'm in over my head. In a foreign country, smoking and snorting who the hell knows what with a possible criminal and a paranoid cocaine dealer. Gotta do something. Gotta get some fresh air or splash water on my face. Why am I standing? I don't remember getting up. George's wild cocaine eyes leered at me behind a cigarette. You okay, mate? I'm swell, just need to piss, I said, way too loud. Then I was walking, but it wasn't something I told my legs to do. It was more like gliding. No, floating across the room to the hallway. I looked back to catch Remy watching me, the creep. The corridor was long and had more doors than I remembered. I tried doorknobs on my search for the toilet, but each was locked. Really don't remember the hallway being so long. I was running out of rooms and stopped dead when I noticed the camera watching me. Its red light beamed into my soul. Was Remy watching me? The last door opened with a low creak. The room was dark, but my eyes were drawn to a dim lamp on the bedside table. A girl was lying on her back on a single mattress in the corner. Her legs hung off the bed with her boots still on, like she had passed out where she stood and fallen onto the bed. I laughed because it looked like she was dead. Then a bubble of thought surged from the depths of my substance-rattled mind. This is a drug dealer's apartment. What if she overdosed? I decided to check on her. Afraid to wake her, I attempted measured steps toward her. But cocaine isn't a stealthy drug, and I stomped over to the bed. She wore a black tank top, and as her details came into focus, it looked like she wasn't breathing. My stomach knotted as I leaned over to see her face, but it was turned away from me. "Please don't be dead," I said under my breath. My hand on the wall, I leaned over her and caught my reflection in a mirror on the wall. The harsh underlighting from the lamp washed away all of my features I considered to be good-looking. My hazel eyes looked crazed and dilated like a nighttime predator. If this chick wakes up, she's going to think I'm trying to feel her up. I couldn't turn back now. I leaned over further and saw her eyelids were barely open, showing only the whites of her eyes. She looked very damn dead. Jesus! I fell back onto my ass. I scrambled to touch her arm. It was ice cold. I yanked back my hand and a shiver ran up my spine. Frozen turkeys were warmer than this poor girl. She wasn't just dead. She was super dead. Look at that. That is end of chapter 1 too. Cliffhanger. So, come back for chapter 2 tomorrow, page 8. I don't know what this motion is. Love you, bye. Day 8 of me pirating my crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Let's go. This is the start of chapter 2. Page 8. This can't be real. This can't actually be happening. All I could do was stare at the poor girl. Bill was the only dead person I'd ever seen, but after 30 years of drinking, he looked like a corpse long before he died. My mind couldn't compute a dead young woman. The room was quiet, and death hangs heavy in confined spaces. There was a stillness in that room I can feel to this day. A tremble shot from my hands through my whole body. Need to move. Need to tell the others. I bolted down the hallway and stumbled into the sitting room. The three of them were laughing, but stopped as I slid to a halt at the coffee table. My expression said it all. Their smiles evaporated. "Dude, there's a dead girl in there." I pointed down the hall. Cash jumped to his feet. "What the hell?" Remy's eyes widened. No, he said. "That is Madeleine. She gets high, and then sleeps. Elle va bien." The tremble in my hand worsened, but this time as anger. "Remy? That girl? Madeleine? Ne va pas bien." They were silent. Cash's eyes poured over me, but I didn't dare look at him. We wouldn't be in this drug den if it weren't for me. George stood up and tossed his cigarette into the ashtray. "Show me." George, Cash, and I hurried for the bedroom while Remy called from behind. "She's asleep," he said. "Je promets." We poured into the room and halted at the foot of the bed. All the color had washed from Cash's freckled face. "I think I'm going to throw up," he said. George took a direct approach in his inspection and turned Madeleine's face toward the lamp. Cash and I gasped. The motion opened her eyes and the light revealed gray-blue irises under pale eyelids. Cash covered his mouth and turned away. And that is page 8. It's getting tough. Sorry. See you tomorrow. Day 9 of me pirating my crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Here we go, page 9. I patted Cash on the back because, sure, that would fix the dead girl. Remy's face was bright red as he paced, running his hands through his greasy hair and rattling off in French, too fast for me to understand, but it didn't sound good. George knelt beside her. "She's pretty." My chest ached. I don't know why, but those two words broke my heart. I pressed my hands together to stop them from shaking. I scanned the room to make sense of everything, but Remy knocked me out of the way to grab George. "We have to get rid of her, maintenant." He shook George by the shoulders. Cash spun around. "Get rid of her?" "We need to call an ambulance," I asserted. "If it's an overdose, maybe they can save her." Remy faced me. Sweat clung to his lips. "Imbecile," he said. "She's dead. There's nothing to save. She's already cold." Why was Remy so angry, and why didn't he want to call for help? I felt like an idiot for not putting it together sooner. George must have come to the same conclusion because he jumped up and shoved Remy. "Mate, there are bloody hand marks around her neck." Remy stumbled back. His eyes welled with tears. Cash and I looked at Madeleine's neck, and sure enough, there were bruises. Remy, that bastard, he strangled her. Images of my battered mother came flooding back to me. This was all too familiar. We were having sex, Remy said. She likes it rough. She kept saying, étouffe-moi, choke me harder. But she stopped moving. Remy put his face in his hands and wept French tears. Elle ne bougeait pas. Bougeait pas. French, I don't know. A voice in my head screamed, leave. I should have yanked Cash out of that apartment and back onto the street. But the girl, I couldn't help Mom, but maybe I could help Madeline. And that is the end of page 9. It's getting a little intense, so bear with me. It only gets worse. See you tomorrow, hopefully, maybe. Day 10 of me pirating my crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page 10, here we go. You need to call the police, I spoke up. Tell them what you told us. Remy cried harder. I can't. You know what I do here. I will go to prison for a long time. He stopped abruptly, wiping away his tears. His red eyes scanned our faces before dropping the bomb. All of us will go to prison. All of us, Cash said. Remy took a breath. His hopeless expression faded into something eerily tranquil. His little mind tinkered with a plan. You are foreigners. You have taken illegal drugs. And you do not speak French. I can tell the police whatever I want. Police in Paris do not like tourists causing problems. He pointed to Madeline. And a dead French girl is a big problem for you, unless you help me. Look at that. He speaks perfect damn English when it comes to blackmail. The room dimmed. All I could see was Remy's face, half lit from the lamp. His beady eyes glared back at me. I shuddered with the urge to hit him. To hell with you, George said. Clean up your own mess. I balled my fists and stood with George. You're outnumbered here, asshole, I said. We're leaving now. Try and stop us. To my surprise, Remy burst into laughter. He had a final card to play. He put a finger in my face. And you, Roy Descamps, I have you, you stupid idiot. Ven Zichy. He pulled me to the hall and pointed to the camera above the door. That camera watched you come into this room. Maybe you killed her. Fuck you, Cash said. You're not putting this on him. My eyes stung with tears in the purple light. And though I tried, I couldn't speak. Remy turned to Cash and George. I will delete the film if you help me. If not, I will have to give it to the police. Nous sommes dans le même bateau, non? He said with a shading grin. A switch flipped and I lost control. And that is the end of page 10. Come back tomorrow to see what happens when our narrator loses control. Toot my own horn here, but I think it's getting pretty good, so. Day 11 of me pirating my crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page 11. I slammed Remy to the floor and pounded my fist into his forehead. Bad aim. My second blow broke his nose. Better. Before I could land a third, George wrapped me in a bear hug and we tumbled to the floor. I fought but couldn't break free. Remy laid on his back stunned with his arms stiff in the air like a toppled mannequin. Cash rushed over to hold me back. Jesus, chill out. He shook me. Calm down. You can't just get rid of her, I yelled. George and I struggled and panted, but he didn't dare let me go. All three of us watched Remy sit up against the wall and tug his busted nose. He wiped away the blood with his palm. We don't have a choice, Remy snorted blood. We call the police and we're all screwed. Not just me, all of us. All of us. The bastard. We were silent as Remy produced a crooked blunt from his pocket. We understood what he meant, but none of us wanted to be the first to cave to blackmail. This is your problem, mate, George's voice rumbled against my back. Not ours. Remy ignored him, fumbling with his lighter. C'est facile. If you get rid of her and nous séparons. Cash plopped onto the floor. He must have done the math in his head because he had a lost look in his eyes. What do we do? George released me. Maybe he hoped I would kill Remy and solve our problem, but I didn't. I examined Madeline once more. She was pretty, and she deserved better than this. But Remy was right. I was coked out of my mind. There was no way I could talk to French cops. We'd go to jail and I'd be kicked out of my program before it even started. And there's no way I could go back home. I had no home. Everyone seemed to arrive at the same bitter conclusion. Madeline's life was over, but ours wasn't. How would we do it? I whispered. To toot my own horn here, but I think it's getting pretty good, So come back tomorrow for page 12, day 12. Let's go. Or you can always buy the book. It's on the internet. Go check it out. By way of Paris. Bye. Day 12 of me I just spit on the camera. Day 12 of me pirating my crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page 12, chapter 2. Let's go. Cash shot me a look. Luke, you can't be serious. I can't go back, Corey, I said. You know I can't go back. We throw her in the Seine. Remy's voice was stymied by smoke. No way, Cash said. She's a human being. I studied Cash and Remy in the dull light. Two people from opposite ends of society, united in this room by one dead girl. And somewhere between them was me. The jury was still out on Pretty Boy George. Cash rubbed his face. The tremble that had been in my hands was now in his. He and Remy were too opposite on the morality scale to lead us through this, but maybe I could bridge the gap between them. I pushed myself off of George, who sat dazed against the nightstand. I rubbed my sore knuckles and an idea came to me. We should take her back home, I said. It might be a while before someone finds her. That'll give you some time to get rid of your drugs and put together an alibi. George patted my back. That's a boy, he said, finally speaking. Remy, you know where she lives, yeah? Remy frowned as he considered the fledgling plot. Oui, not far. Do you have a car? I asked, monotone and all business. Oui, Renault Dacia. I shrugged. I don't know what that is. It's a French car, George said. It's a bit small, but it'll work. I don't know how a vacation could turn to this, but if we were careful, maybe we could actually pull this off and get that footage deleted. Remy took a long hit from his blunt. Stop smoking, asshole, I said. You're driving. Cash stared at the floor. I squeezed his shoulder. It's not that I was entirely calm. I was terrified of what could happen, but I got Cash into this mess, and I was determined to get him out. But that meant moving a body through a city of 2 million people. And that is the end of chapter 2. There you go. Come back tomorrow. See ya. Day 13 of me pirating my entire crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. And no, I've not been returning my publisher's calls. And I won't. Alright, the start of chapter 3. Most people have speculated on how they'd get rid of a body if the situation were ever to occur. But I've got to tell you, when the situation does occur, you can't think for shit. The four of us debated for a half hour in that dark room on how to transport poor Madeline. Truthfully, we were stalling, putting off the inevitable. First, I sent Remy and George to retrieve the car because evidently Remy murders people when he's unsupervised. This gave me and Cash a chance to figure out how to move her. I yanked the shade off the bedside lamp for more light. Nausea rose from the pit of my stomach, seeing the bruises around her neck, purple shadows of fingers. I was 10 years old again, crying into my mother's silk blouse. She rubbed my back while holding a bag of frozen peas to her neck. Moms and dads fight sometimes, Lou, she said. He didn't mean it. Cash and I knelt onto the bed and sat Madeline upright. Her torso had stiffened and her skin was ice cold. Cash's breathing stammered, as if he were on the verge of sobbing. I'm gonna get us out of this, man, I said, wrapping her arm around my neck. It's you and me, no matter what. Get us out of this? His jaw quivered. We're helping someone get away with murder. Don't you understand? This night is gonna haunt us for the rest of our lives. That's it for page 13. It's getting tough, sorry, yeah. We'll see you tomorrow for page 14 and some more of helping someone get away with murder. So that's a great note to leave it on. Bye. Oh, hello. It's day 14 of me pirating my entire crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page 14. Tears formed in my eyes, knowing he was right. With her body against mine, I could see Madeline had been dressed by someone else. Her tank top was inside out, her pants were only halfway zipped, and her boot wasn't pulled all the way onto her left foot. Feeling her in my arms, I finally got a sense of how small she was. Remy wasn't a big guy, but there's no way she could have pried him off. Lay her back down, I'll just carry her, I said. Cash guided Madeline gently onto her back. Are you sure? Yeah, I forced a grin. I'm way stronger than you anyway. He tried to smile, but gave up. We were quiet for a while as the bare lamp bulb burned a black spot in the corner of my eye. I paced the room with a cigarette while Cash sat on the bed, staring at Madeline's purse in his hands. Was he calculating our odds of getting away with this? There were so many points along the way where we could get caught. We had to get her downstairs and into the car without being seen. If Remy doesn't drive like a dipshit, we shouldn't have any trouble on the road. The risk resumes getting her into her building and apartment unseen. Oh God, what about neighbors or CCTV? My body jolted from footsteps in the hall. Oi! George called out. He stepped into the room out of breath. The lift's broken. We'll have to take the stairs. Cash jumped to his feet. You left him alone down there? Took his keys. George patted his pocket. Do you need a hand with her? No, I said. We need hats. In case there are cameras. We tore through Remy's hall closet and found 2 baseball caps and a beanie. I pulled the beanie down to my eyes. The hats looked incredibly suspicious, but they were comforting. The 3 of us examined one another under the veil of purple light, 3 ghosts of the good timers we were just hours before. I took one last hit from my cigarette and stubbed it out on Remy's spotless wall because fuck him. I dropped the butt into the hall light fixture. Come back tomorrow for page 15. Day 15 of me reading my crime novel to the internet, 1 page at a time. Or until I find my sleeves again. Shut up. It's hot outside. This is page 15. I felt like crying again when I went to collect Madeline, but I fought the tears back. Come on, hon. I scooped her into my arms. Cash tucked Madeline's purse under his arm and opened the apartment door, peering onto the landing. He nodded, and I followed him down the first set of stairs, George taking up the rear. Madeline was heavy in my arms, and I could smell her shampoo. It was flowery and sweet, and it made me want to throw up. I probably would have if I weren't so focused on keeping sure-footed on the stairs. Cash kept a hand on my arm and guided me down each flight, while also watching for any neighbors on the lower floors. I hoped he still wanted to be my friend after all of this. Step after step, the muscles in my arms and back began to burn, and I had no time to stop and rest. When we reached the front door, I could hear faint city sounds. I was damp with sweat, imagining throngs of people on the sidewalk and endless flows of cars streaming past. Okay, give us a sec, George said as he slipped past me. I'll check the street. He inched the door ajar and peeked outside, then swung it open. George ran out to Remy's silver Renault, and opened the back door. Cash was first and I followed. The pavement was wet and halos of mist clung to the streetlights. Not a soul in sight on the sleepy side street. A handful of cars and scooters zipped by at the end of the road. What time was it? How long had we been in Remy's flat? Cash slipped into the back seat and I passed Madeline to him, then took my place. George shut my door and jumped into the front seat. Remy turned from behind the wheel and scrunched his face. Madeline's head rested on Cash's shoulder. Are you crazy? Remy said. Put her in the boot. And that's page 15. Come back tomorrow for more. I'll have sleeves next time, I promise. Day 16 of me pirating my own crime novel to the internet, 1 page at a time. Page 16, let's go. One sentence from him and the hairs on my neck stood up. A wave of fear crashed over me, and I was afraid of being caught and ruining mine and Cash's lives. Afraid I'd never be rid of the scent of her shampoo, but most of all, I was afraid of how I could no longer control my anger. I punched Remy in his ear. His head slammed into the window. Even his yelp had a French accent. George grabbed me before I could hit him a second time. Everyone, calm down, George said. She's not going in the boot, mate. Start the car. Let's get on with it. Remy rubbed his ear, but took the keys and turned the engine over. Cash glared at me. I didn't hit him that hard, I said. Cash turned to watch the buildings pass by his window. I inspected Madeline, but couldn't look at her anymore. Instead, I monitored Remy's driving and surveyed the Paris streets. There were still people out, but not many. Stumbling bar-goers headed home, and a few homeless people who had no home. The usual night crawlers. The clock on the dashboard read 3:17 a.m., and I realized how tired I was. My eyes struggled to focus as buildings blurred by my window, like towering apparitions, judging us for what we were doing. Most of my Paris exploration was by foot, and in the car I was completely disoriented. We were entirely at the mercy of an idiot murderer. We turned for a side street, then another. Lightless Gothic buildings with darkened windows leered at our car. Old-world ghosts etched into the corners of the stone walls. Gargoyles perched high on building tops. I held my breath as ghoulish figures stared at me with their hollow eyes and stone fangs. I was relieved to see the Hôtel de Ville. It was a massive building with ornate Renaissance stylings, which were lit up like a palace. We were on the Rue de Rivoli, headed east toward the Louvre, where we turned north for the second arrondissement. And that is page 16. Come back tomorrow to hear more on this ghastly car right here. Oof. Bye. That's a cliffhanger. You gotta come back tomorrow. You don't have to. You just gotta. So, day 17 of me pirating my own crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page 17. I have no idea how long we rode. 5 minutes? 10? Time stands still when you're hitching a ride to hell with a dead girl's icy hand on your thigh. I had just reached down to move Madeline's hand when we stopped in front of a tiny cafe ironically named Le Grand Café. This is it. Remy ratcheted up the parking brake. We need to be fast. Remy took her purse. I hated seeing him sift through her belongings, her lip gloss, wallet, phone, and finally her keys. We waited for a taxi to putter past and in unison shoved open our doors. Tugging the beanie down, I stepped out and lifted Madeline from the car. Cash ran to give me a steadying hand while Remy fumbled for the door key. I'll stay with the car. George shut the back door behind me. Cash and I rolled our eyes, but we had no choice but to trust him. We crossed the sidewalk just as Remy got her door open. The entryway was dark, but I could see from the streetlight there was a letterbox on the wall with about 10 slots and a winding staircase at the back of the foyer. Cash flicked on a light, and the hall and staircase illuminated. Dust had collected along the baseboards, and the walls were a dingy white from years of passing residents. I stopped at the base of the stairs and waited for Remy. "Et vite au sommet," he said, taking the lead. Of course she lived at the top. I groaned, but started a steady pace up the steps. The car ride didn't give my muscles much time to rest, and before I reached the end of the first flight, they began to tremble under her weight, and I was sweating again. Cash saw me struggling and placed his hand in the center of my back to push me all the way to the top floor. We were lucky. Her building was tomb silent. Irony. Remy slid her door key into the lock, and just before he turned it, Cash grabbed his hand. "Wait. I think I hear someone inside," he whispered. Oh, that's the end of 17. So, that's a cliffhanger. You gotta come back tomorrow. You don't have to. You just gotta. So, it's different. You don't have to, but you gotta. I'll see you tomorrow. Day 18 of me pirating my own crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page 18. Remy bit his nail as Cash put an ear to the door. I felt my grip slipping and shifted Madeline in my arms, clasping my hands together. It would buy me another minute, but not much longer. "Does she live alone?" Cash asked Remy. "I think so." I leaned toward Remy so that Madeline's head was next to his. "You better know so, asshole." "Yes, elle vit seule," he recoiled. "It's a small place." Cash gave me a sigh. We've been lucky so far, but what if Madeline had a house guest who waited up all night for her, just to be awoken by 3 strange men returning her body? The hallway was so quiet I could hear my own breathing echo between the walls. Cash turned the key as quietly as possible, but despite his best efforts, the bolt clanked loudly. He grimaced and pushed the door open an inch. A faint light could be seen from inside. Cash pushed the door open halfway. He peered through the gap, blocking my view of the interior. Just as I shifted for a better vantage point, a voice called from inside, and there was movement behind the door. The 3 of us jumped back. I almost dropped Madeline, but before we could run away, a gray and white cat darted into view inside. We stood for a moment, sucking at the still air. Remy placed his hands on his hips. J'ai oublié qu'elle avait ton chat, he panted. Cash shook his head. Asshole, he said, wiping the doorknob with his shirt. Remy and I followed Cash inside into Madeline's one-room garret apartment. A single window at the far end with her bed underneath. It had a single window at the far end with her bed underneath. I beelined for her bed, dodging the cat along the way. Her bed was a sea of pillows, and I nestled her onto the fluffy white duvet. I took a step back to survey the place. And that is page 18. Tomorrow we have a special treat. We have a page and a half, because that's how it goes sometimes. So, have a fun Friday treat. See you tomorrow. Day 19 of me pirating my own crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Page and a half today on page 19, so that's awesome. Alright, here we go. A tiny kitchen by the door smelled faintly of her last meal. The apartment was lit by a single lamp atop her roll-top desk. The wall above the desk was plastered with still life sketches, Paris streets with people, pigeons on a park bench, a hound dog napping in the sun. She was creative, like me. Her home was a cute place, decorated with posters of old French films like Vive sa vie, Lola, and Les Bonnes Femmes, titles I still remember. Looking down at her, it looked as if she were sound asleep and safe in her bed. My cheeks were hot with tears because that wasn't true at all. There were Polaroids of her and her friends making goofy faces taped in clusters above her headboard. One in particular jumped out at me. It was Madeline in front of a wall of squares and circles, all different colors of the rainbow. She had her hand on a yellow circle, looking over her shoulder at the camera with a wry expression that said, "Follow me." Madeline seemed like someone who was particular about the things in her life and home, and seeing her boots on the spotless white comforter bothered me. So I unlaced her boots and set them on the floor next to the bed. Cash and Remy watched me wipe tears away from my face, and I zeroed in on Remy through blurred vision. I'd never felt so much hatred for another human being. My eyes darted around the room for something to kill him with, but I cried harder when I couldn't even find a suitable weapon. I'm a screw-up. I couldn't even kill him for you, Madeline. I'm sorry. Cash sniffled as Madeline's cat circled through his legs. He's the best person I know. When we should have been rushing to escape Madeline's apartment, he searched her place for cat food. Cash tore open a big bag of cat food and refilled its water bowl. I guess he figured it might be quite some time before anyone discovered Madeline, and he didn't want the cat to go hungry. None of us spoke as we descended the stairs to the ground floor. I took up the rear with a heavy heart, remembering Cash's warning about the night staying with us forever. He was right, because I could already feel it weaving into the fabric of my identity. How do I get rid of this feeling? Can I box it up and put it away and never to open it again? I lagged behind the two of them, my steps labored. I felt the weight of her body still in my arms, bearing down on my soul. My head was too heavy to hold up, and I looked down, watching my steps. Cash swung open the front door, and I heard voices in the street. When I looked up, flashing blue police lights flooded the hallway. I dare say that's another cliffhanger. My God, that's the end of chapter 3. Come back tomorrow. Or else. That's stupid. Day 20 of me pirating my crime novel to the internet, one page at a time. Day 20, page 20. This is started chapter 4. Look, it's even got a fun little Big Ben doodle there. A little bit of a jump cut, so here we go. Chapter 4, page 20. I had dreamt about London for 20 years and should have been excited to finally be there. But over the span of 36 hours, a post-Paris fog had seeped into my head and left me numb. Cash and I lumbered from Paddington Station up to Praed Street through a torrent of people knocking against our luggage. Everything I owned was stuffed into a duffel bag, a backpack, and a large rolling suitcase. Cash had his backpack and suitcase, but it was evident we were weighed down by much more than our belongings. We dropped our bags at the busy corner, where I lit a cigarette and squinted into the late September sun. Cash was silent as he stared into the rush of traffic. I felt like a lost child, hypnotized by the voices and footsteps parading past us in the afternoon glow. A young woman was murdered, and the world just kept moving. Would we ever move with it again, too? It was hard to explain, but I felt like Cash saw me differently after Paris. His mind had been planted firmly in the present throughout our European trek, but now his attention seemed elsewhere. We were in desperate need of cheering up, so I decided to put off meeting my landlady for another day. "Let's get a drink," I said, hoisting up my bag. "Do you think we should?" Cash frowned. "I do. We've been through a lot." And that's page 20. See you tomorrow.